I've got a new box under my arm with Toon Kings and Men of Britonia. So let's set the tone, listening to the one and only. We've got to that old world charm.
G'day everyone and welcome back to another episode of That Old World Charm. This is episode 42 or 43. We're not quite sure where this is going to come out because there's some stuff and some things and some stuff, and you already know that the Wood Elves are coming out, so we've got a review from that in the pipe. So this might be coming out before, if it gets edited in time, or it'll be coming out next week. And we are going to be talking about a bit of teams, Old World, and also Peter, the beautiful Falcon boy, has joined us. Hello, mate. And he's going to be recapping his run at the Canhammer Teams Tournament. Also, Danny's here.
Hey.
Yeah, Danny's here too. And I'm here too.
Damn.
We're gonna be window dressing to this Falcon-based episode. But Peter, you recently came back from was it 5-player teams at Canhammer?
It was 4-player teams.
4-player teams, spicy.
Yeah.
4 players is, I guess, when you don't know how many teams you're going to get, you just go for the lower number. But you need at least, I'm of the opinion, you need at least 4 to make it a teams event. 3 doesn't quite do it.
I agree. 4 is kind of the minimum. 4 is nice because it's like a car full, right? Without having to get somebody in a bitch seat, which is nice. So like it's an easier team to put together. This was the first year of the Canhammer Team Tournament having an Old World Teams event. They've done Warhammer Fantasy Battle stuff in the past. And they had a limited number of tables, although next year they've said they will expand it because it was pretty popular. It did sell out. For this event, they did 8 teams of 4, playing 5 rounds over 2 days. And it was a really great time. I'm really impressed with everything overall. I've been to events run by this crew before, the Capital City Bloodbath and Canhammer Team Tournament in the past. They've got a beautiful venue. Chris Haynes is the main TO, and he's just a great guy who's been around the business for a long time, and really knows how to put together a great tournament experience.
I have extremely fond memories of 8th edition fantasy teams events, extremely fond, super. There's my favorite team events, and I've played 40k team events at the highest level at the WTC and everything between, and still fantasy was so much better as a teams event, I think, than singles, and teams fantasy is just the bee's knees. Danny, did you play many back in the day?
Not really. No, we didn't. The United States didn't have a lot of teams events that were organized. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Pretty late to the party there. How was the pairings done for this 4 players, and what do you think, if anything, was the nuance therein, Peter?
So pairings was done in what you would do is, of your 4 players, each team would pick one defender that you would push forth and reveal. Once defenders were revealed, the teams would have a minute to put forth 2 attackers to go into that defender. And what would then happen is the defender would get to pick which one of those attacking armies they would get to play against. So it would be like Team A would get to pick their opponent, then Team B would do the same. Based on that knowledge, the player that wasn't selected from the attackers would play against the remaining player for the other team, and vice versa. And that's kind of how your 4 matchups got put together.
Yeah, so essentially you had power of selection on 2 matchups because, of course, you knew who was being rejected. And by then, all three of their armies are face up because they've put in 1 as a defender, then 2 as attackers.
Exactly.
So you can get to kind of guess what their champ is, what they're holding in their hand. Yeah. And so it's when this might be a little bit high level, but essentially I think of this pairing process as guessing the champ, guessing the one they're going to hold in their hand, And if
Yeah.
you guess the one they're going to hold in their hand, everything else
Yeah.
kind of just locks in for what you believe is their likely put up and attackers into yours. And if you can do that effectively, you can really unpick their pairings process.
Exactly.
Did that turn out to be the case?
For the most part, yeah. Like, this was the first event. I would say of the teams that we saw, half of them were like really prepared for a teams event in terms of like working out how they wanted to pair into the different teams in advance and thinking things through on like a really higher level. And then there was like, 2 or 3 teams that are just there for fun. And then probably 2 teams that were kind of like had half of an idea of what they were doing. But yeah, so like in advance, we kind of put together what exactly we wanted to see, and we pitched out for each matchup, basically who we were going to put up as a defender in almost every situation, barring like a really weird mission, and what we were hoping to see, and like what we would do based on like what they would throw back at us. The way the like priority was put together, the B team, the team that picked second in terms of attackers, defenders, basically got to decide 3 of the matchups if they did it right. Mm-hmm. But the A team would effectively get to pick 3 of the tables. So it kind of evened out that way. Because the tables really were all like all 4 tables were very unique in terms of terrain setups and everything. Yep. So you got to, that was kind of where the balance lay, I would say.
So another level I always remember in fantasy teams is that at times you would have different missions for different matchups. Like you got to pick your table and the mission you're going to be playing on as the defender. Was that one that they baked into this? And would you think that would have been better or worse if they did or didn't?
They did not. We did talk about it because like there are other events that do that. I believe WTC for Old World, that's what they're talking about doing, for example. But no, in this one, every round you knew what mission you were going into. There was a specific secondary. So, I do think like if they wanted to add like another layer of complexity to the teams event, like from a competitive level, I would love to see that where you also got to pick the missions. Because they made some changes to some of the core missions that I really liked, and they made them more enjoyable. Like meeting engagement was a blast because of the changes they made, for an example, just like slight tweaks. And I think if we had been able to also pick missions, things would have even gone more in our favor, and we had a pretty good run.
Nice. All right, what was you in your 4-pack?
So our 4-pack. So first off, we were Team Square based. So it was myself, Val Heffelfinger from the Square Based podcast, Rob Symes from the Square Based podcast, and then Shane Hall, who is he's a WTC judge for the Old World, and he's the one that is the main judge for like all the Square Based online tournaments, etc. Shane was running Bretonnian Exiles. I was running Mortuary Cults, Dragonless Mortuary Cults, just going full in on Bows and Ushabti.
Yeah.
And then Val was running a Screams list with Blood Knights, so not like 6 Screams, you only had 3 or 4, plus like big bricks of Graveguard, Blood Knights, and zombies. And then Rob was on like a Warriors of Chaos good stuff list, where he was running 2 gigantic Chaos Spawn, the like ubiquitous Chaos Lord on Dragon, some Forsaken Dragon Ogres, etc.
Nice. That is a very tough 4-pack. Do you feel like there was any factions that you were left on the shelf, like you really wanted to take, but you didn't? It would have rounded you out better.
I'm not sure if we would have rounded out better. I think we could have made tweaks to Rob's list in particular to make us a more well-rounded, team of 4. We were at one point not going to run one of the undeads, either vampires or Tomb Kings, and run dwarves instead, because this tournament allowed allies. And so initially I was on basically like 1,500 points of dwarves with a 500 point contingent of empire, so that we could get a level 4 battle magic wizard. So it's a more reliable double move than the anvil provides, and you can make him effectively like a +5 dispeller, and like really juice up the anti-magic side of things. So that was a list that I did do a couple test games. I even ran one or two into you, Adam. And it was a really great list, but undead are just so powerful, and they provide such strong utility. It was too hard not to just run both on the table.
I'm throwing all these questions out here, Danny. You got any you want to throw?
Yeah. So besides the Empire Dwarf list, nothing else was close to making the cut?
No, not really. Like, we talked about some other factions. Shane's a huge ogre lover, but they've got too many bad matchups.
Yeah.
We did look at high elves and wood elves. Like, basically, once we got our core, we really wanted Warriors of Chaos because they're just solid into a lot of armies. And they're also kind of like a quote unquote idiot proof list.
Sure.
We really wanted at least one of the undeads, Tomb Kings or Vampire Counts. We particularly wanted Tomb Kings, but Val had a lot of reps with Vampire Counts. And then Bretonnia just is a must-have because they're such an aggressive army. They're probably the biggest. They're probably the best matchup into Tomb Kings of most varieties as well. We knew everybody was going to have a Tomb Kings list, so we wanted to make sure we had Bretts. So like those three were must-haves, and then the fourth could have just been, I think, almost whatever. Like, we looked at Orcs and Goblins, High Elves, Wood Elves, and all of them probably would have been fine. But we went with, like, let's just take the four best lists in the game and make it happen type thing. So
no, that's 100%. There's a way to. So this is one of my criticisms of smaller team formats. Like, when you get to just 4 or 5 player teams, you can just kind of play the best singles armies in the game without much nuance and kind of do really well. But where teams gets very exciting for the old worlds is in bigger formats, when you run out of like those 3 best armies to take in every single one, and you start having to build things fit for purpose. And that's
for sure.
That's my buzzword for teams. Every army has to be fit for purpose. And when you're a best army, and when you're one of the best armies in the game, everything you do is fit for purpose. So it doesn't really matter. But when you start getting to like 8-player, 6-player, 7-player, 8-player teams, it gets really, really spicy. And so many of the armies that right now don't see any success really in singles play get a huge amount of agency towards the end of those piles. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for teams in fantasy, because you can have a high elf list, a high elf, points denial list by just making a big brick of, 1,000 points and keeping it ethereal or game, stuff like that. And, just not get blown out by your opponent's Warriors of Chaos. And that Warriors of Chaos list may have gone and gotten a huge win against one of your really good lists. And instead you hold them up, essentially win the round for your team because your Wood Elf player didn't crack. And then your Tomb Kings managed to go off, or Brett's managed to go off and get a big win elsewhere. And those are the things that, to me, really signify that teams is so much better for old world than singles. Does that echo with you as well, Danny?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, look, there's advantages and disadvantages for teams and singles. Like, obviously, if you're
no disadvantages. Bah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you just have to have my only complaint with teams is, like, if you are building armies that are quote unquote fit for purpose, like, you're kind of a one-trick pony, and like you just have to do the trick and get the right matchup, and like then you get the win. Like, whereas if you're taking an all-comers list, like, yeah, you want to take the best army of the game, or you want to take something that can beat the best army in the game.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, like, there's kind of a different nuance there that's also fun and exciting. But I agree that teams is very exciting, and I'd love to see like a larger format too. My other question, Peter, for you has to do with, as far as reps goes, how many reps did you guys get in your with your respective armies before you went to the tournament?
So Val had a ton of reps with Vampire Counts. He brought them to Adepticon, and so he played, and he made very little modifications to his list from Adepticon. So he'd had, his 5 games there, plus his 3 games in the doubles where he ran effectively half of that list, a little more than half. And then he did a couple of practice games in Warhol. He went to another GT in the Toronto area and brought that list, and I believe an RTT. So he had probably more than a dozen games. He had definitely more than a dozen games with the list. or slight variations on it, which was great. Because like Val, just like anybody else with ADHD, sometimes gets a little distracted and needs the routine over and over again. And it really showed, because Val, in terms of like the teams, there were 2 teams that went undefeated. There was ours and another. We went 4 wins and a draw. And in terms of the players on those teams, only 3 players between all of us went undefeated. There was myself. I went 5-0. The Tomb Kings player on the other undefeated team also went 5-0. And then Val went 4 wins and a draw. And that was it. So, and it was very clear in Val's matchups, because I know at least 2 of his opponents thought that they were just going to beat him, either because they didn't really respect Val as a player, maybe, or because they just thought that their list was better than it was, and Val just kind of outplayed them,
Nice.
which was great. And then, so Val had a ton of reps. Shane plays a lot, and he's just like he knows every rule page by page. He's a rules lawyer to no end, to a frustrating end, to be honest, but he's a great guy. And so he had a ton of reps with his Bretonia Exiles list. He knew it like back and forth. I played probably half a dozen games in prep for the event. And really, like, once you get, for mortuary cults, especially the list that I made, but really any mortuary cults list that's like relying on all the magic, once you get your command phase down, like the rest is nothing. It's just, can you remember like the order and what spells do you need to cast? So yeah, I only had like a half dozen games, I would say, but I also play tested mortuary cults back when it came out, so it's not like I was fully unaware of their capabilities. Sure. Rob was probably our weakest link in terms of reps. He's played a ton of games as Warriors of Chaos, but he was always like a ringer for his own event, so he was running like more funsy stuff like big bricks of Warriors. Big bricks of Warriors and stuff like that. So this was a new list for him, and because he's so busy, he didn't have any time to really get any reps in. And so he was kind of our weakest link in terms of like gameplay. But he's been in the scene for forever. He's played competitively AOS 40K and Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So it wasn't a huge thing. I think some of his rust showed in his first game that he lost 11-9. And then after that, he was like bang on, which was great because like he carried us in some pretty hard matchups. In fact, the other player that went undefeated with Tomb Kings, who was like, if you look at his win-loss record, he wrecked everybody he played against, except Rob. He only beat Rob by like 110 points.
Wow, nice.
So it was like 10 points over what would have been considered a draw. Rob really played his ass off in that game.
That's great. So my last question has to do with I don't think we've talked about this yet. So did they released everyone's army list, I assume? Like
yes,
people to build against. So how did you guys kind of start doing your like rankings process for like red matchups, green matchups, that kind of thing? Like, and what was your process for that?
Okay, yeah. So this is the big thing, and it was a lot of fun to do. Val was our team captain. So Val and I and Shane, we met up online. I want to say a day or two after lists went live. And we spent probably 3 or 4 hours just going over every list from every team, and then rating them based on what we expected their capabilities were, and like how we would play into them, each one of our lists. Rob was very busy, and because Rob's list was one that I was very familiar with, and so was Shane, it was pretty easy for us to kind of figure out on Rob's behalf, like how the matchups would go. So we graded them on a 5-color scale. Red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. Red being a matchup that, like, as long as both players are equally skilled, we did not think we had a chance in hell of winning. So we were looking at like trying to get like a 15-5 is a red for us. Orange is we expect to get a close loss in that matchup if we're both equal. So like a 12-8 or like 8-12 or like a 7-13. Yellow is we're not sure. We expect it to be something close to a draw. And that's kind of what we would be hopeful for if we played the matchup exactly how we wanted. The green matchup is a close win, so between like a 12-8 and a 14-6 or so. And then blue was we knew we would probably either table the opponent or come pretty close. There weren't a lot of blues. There were a couple of lists from some of the teams that ended up performing kind of worse, the bottom two. That they had a list or two that were kind of blues across the board because they were like trying Lizardmen out and stuff like that. There was one player who ran a Lizardman list where it seemed pretty clear that he thought maybe they were going to be using the Renegade pack because it was a list that would probably be pretty stellar with Renegades.
That was going to be my next question.
But without Renegades, it was really bad. And so like we looked at it and we're like, unless those Bastillodons absolutely go off, all of us can probably 20-0 this list or come close to it. As an example, that guy, by the way, was an awesome player. We never played against him, but I did get to chat with him very briefly. And like, I think he was on the team that won Best Sports or the Wooden Spoon. But like, regardless, like just a good. I know the Best Sports was actually, we did play against them. They were the team from Montreal. So we did that for hours. And then we met again on the drive. So what we did was if we weren't from Toronto, we all flew to Toronto. So myself and Rob, Shane and Val both lived there. And then we kind of met at Val's place. And then we drove to Ottawa, which is about like a 4 to 5 hour drive. And we made stops along the way. And we spent the majority of that drive going over the spreadsheet again and confirming our thoughts and like rechecking the lists to make sure there wasn't something we missed. And kind of playing out how they would work depending on the missions as well to try and add that extra layer. And that kind of created our matrix. The big thing we did once we had that all put together was we determined who our defender was going to be in each of those matchups. And the way what we tried to do was pick somebody that only had like one orange or yellow matchup, and then everything else we figured was green or close to green. Or if we had a red, if anybody had a red, like that was the person we were putting up as a defender, just so we could dodge that red matchup. That was like the whole point, was as long as we don't get that red matchup, we're probably okay type of a situation. And that worked out very well for us. So I believe, I can't remember who we put up as a defender in every round, but I know there was like one round where I really didn't want to play into the opponent's Bretonia. Like that was like the one thing we could not have because it was a Bretonian Exiles list with like 9 Pegasus and they had the banner of Chalon, so I couldn't stand and shoot. And they had a Green Knight and 2 or 3 of the tables had a lot of forests. So we put me up in that because we were like, no way. And that went really well for us because they seemed to think that Beastman was going to be a hard matchup for me. They were also trying to dodge Beastmen into Warriors of Chaos because they didn't want the Magic Resist Chaos Lord with the Sorcerer Lord kind of comboing up. They didn't think they had a game into that. But it worked beautifully for me because like that Beastman list, the way it was designed, I knew I was going to get like a 13-7 or a 14-6 quite easily unless he hid for me all game. And also because we had first pick on terrain, I got to pick a map that he didn't have a lot of options to do that on. So that was a good example of us like kind of playing to our strengths that way.
Sure.
And then like there was another one where we put Rob up first because we really didn't want him to play into an opponent's, what was it? I think it was another like Bretonia matchup where their Bretonia wasn't quite as hard for me to deal with. It was still not a great matchup, but we were like, we can sacrifice me into that Bretonia and I might be able to pull a draw out of it type of situation. Whereas we didn't think Rob would have a great game. Stuff like that. So that was kind of our thinking we went to in each matchup, and it all kind of came up gangbusters for us in that regard.
Nice. Excellent. How did you do? How did you guys go? Where'd you come up? What was the run? How did the things and the stuff and the things?
So I mentioned we went undefeated. We had 4 wins and a draw. Our draw was against the other team that went 4 wins and a draw, and we came in second place based on battle points. We were winning going into day 2. The team that we drew against had less battle points than us, so we thought we had a really strong game plan going into day 2, and then it didn't fall apart. We won handily, I would say, both of our day 2 matchups. Unfortunately for us, our opponents, the team we were trying to race against, absolutely hammered everyone they played against. I think they had like a 65-15 and like a 67-13 or something for their 2. So like, and we were pulling off like 55, 25s and 50. So like we weren't leaving a lot of points on the board, but they absolutely weren't. And so we ended up in second place. I went undefeated. I went 5-0, and I had like 5 really awesome opponents. I would say of the matchups, only one of them would I have not put myself as a green into going into the match. Day 1, I only played Beastman players. I was matched into 3 slightly different Beastman lists.
Wow.
And that was great for me because I was more mobile than them in terms of having access to Travel Mystical Pathway. They only really had the Necrosphinxes to target with their Vile Tide, so as long as I kept them protected, I was saving up on my own points, and so that was great. My first game, I started to sweat. It was Hammer and Anvil. My opponent was an awesome guy. Just like he listened to a podcast. We had like a really amicable game. And my shooting shit the bed for 3 turns. I deployed on my back edge because I had a really long hill, like right on the edge of my deployment zone. So I just put all 50 skeleton archers on that hill. And I think I only had like 2 on either side that were trailing off. And I just let him come to me. And even getting reroll 1s to hit off on the whole army, I killed by round 3 2 Razor Gores. And that was it. I was just like, and he was like, man, you're shooting so awful. Like he was being pretty apologetic. His list, he had thought that chariot runners let your chariots count as being part of their unit. So he had a lot of Ungor skirmishers that he was trying to pull shenanigans with. I ended up like right away, I noticed because of the way he deployed, and I mentioned it to him. That's not how it worked, and we pulled up the rule just to clarify, and sure enough, yeah. And so I let him redeploy because otherwise, like turn 1, I was going to blow away. Well, actually, I wouldn't have because my rolls were garbage, but I had a very good chance of just blowing away his great Bray Shaman right away. So he ended up having to basically like create a wall of skirmishers in front of himself and keep them close together and move up a lot more slowly than he wanted to. So that gave me extra time. I ended up killing a unit of Dragon Ogres eventually with Wind Blast and some other shenanigans because we forgot it was Hammer and Anvil, and so I blew him off the side of the board after telling him that might happen, and then he forgot and like positioned him against the side of the board anyway. Then we realized it was Hammer and Anvil, and that could just never have happened. But because there's no walls, but then we kind of worked it out with each other. And that turn I had like put on like every debuff imaginable on them. So the odds were very good. They were going to die regardless. And I basically had no more shooting that turn because I blew them off the board. Nothing else could shoot at anything. And then his 2 greater spawn, he rolled kind of low. But he was running out of time to get points, so he ended up pushing them close to me. And what it let me do was hit one of the spawn with 2 of my Necrosphinxes. I barely killed it, overran into his other. No, I didn't kill it. His other spawn managed to hit mine, but because of how they were angled, they couldn't target. Only one of them could target one of my Sphinxes, and it was the only one that had taken any damage. So I managed to live through the 2 spawn attacking me. I got and then a Tomb Scorpion that I'd ambushed in the previous turn charged their rear and monstrous killing blowed one of the spawn, and then I finished off the other with the two sphinxes. I had my other scorpion come in off his board edge, charge a chariot he'd left behind specifically to guard against that, make the long bomb charge, kill the chariot, overrun, and hit a level 2 that he was using he had a skin of man thing going on.
Yeesh.
Kill the level 2 and then like overrun into the middle of his army. So I ended up with like a 14-6 by the end because I killed everything except his beast lord. And he did manage to take down one of my necrosphinxes, the one that had been injured. So that was a good matchup. My round 2, I was playing against a very similar list, except he didn't have all the skirmishers. He was running the Doom Bull minus like 2 to hit big gore brick. And I got really confused, and it almost cost me the game, I would say, would have made it a draw.
Oh, no.
So like we started playing, and he had a chariot, and in my mind that was his Great Bray Shaman. So I was measuring everything off that Great Bray Shaman to avoid being vile-tided. Mm-hmm. And he was once again running double gigantic spawn. So I pushed one of my necrosphinxes up the side of the board with a plan of, okay, his shaman doesn't have access to him, so I can't get vile-tided. He's going to hit the spawn that he was trying to hide in the back that I'd put a bunch of wounds on with my Ushabti. And I would kill it, turn around, and then I'd be just free to like soak up a 12-8 or something because we were feeling pretty comfortable with our other matchups. And then I realized as he cast TMP on a unit that was out of my dispel range that that was not his shaman. His shaman was on foot, and I just missed it when he said that. And so he teleported his shaman across the board with TMP, blew away that necrosphinx, and now I was behind like 200 and some odd points. And I had to like actually play a game, which kind of sucked for me. Now, luckily, my Ushabti came to play that game, and they picked up. He was running a Minotaur herd with a bunch of random stuff on it to try and abuse Motley Crue, and I managed to blow them away to the man with just the Ushabti over the course of like 2 turns. And that kind of got me back into the game. And then he came at me a little more aggressively, and I was able to almost table him. I think by the end of the game, all he had left was his Doom Bowl by itself and one Chaos Spawn that he'd hidden behind a hill. So that was a really good game. There was another like 13-7 or 14-6, I want to say, because I do believe he killed all my Tomb Scorpions. And I couldn't get the secondary on that one. There was a secondary in each of the missions that was only worth about 250 points. So it could move you by like 1 pip in terms of scoring, battle point scoring. My game 3 was a really good Beastman player, kind of running the list that you see competitive players running with like 2 level 4s, a big brick of ungores with poison, and then he had a big unit of gores with the hard to hit Doom Bull and the vitriolic standard, or not the vitriolic, the standard that makes you -1 AP, and then he had a unit of ambushing gores as well. That game, and he had also once again double gigantic spawn. That game, he came at me really aggressive. I think his captain had told him to do that, and that's often the way to play against me. But he didn't have any like razor gores for me to worry about. He just had like 2 single dragon ogres that were the only kind of fast things in his army. Mm-hmm. So I killed those immediately. Like turn 1, I blew both of them away. He TMP'd over to try and kill one of my necrosphinxes, and whiffed. And the Sphinx lived with 1 wound remaining, and that was with him vile-tiding it twice. I managed to dispel one of the vile-tides. And so I think he vile-tided him 3 times, and I dispelled 2 of them. And then he put all like 60 poison shots into it. And I managed to live with 1 wound. And that let my Sphinx charge behind him, pick up the other Dragon Ogre Shartak. The Dragon Ogre Shartak did kill me because I had to kill it with stomps. I whiffed on the attacks. So we kind of killed each other with stomps. But that was fine because at least I got some points. But it also put him in a position where now we were having a shooting match with my 50 archers that always hit on 5s. And I'm making him -2 to hit me, and his 50 archers that are hitting me on 7s most of the time now. And that was a matchup I was going to start to win. So I ended up picking up a bunch of his Ungors. He teleported them away to avoid that happening more. I almost killed one of his Chaos Spawn once again with the Ushabti, so he had to hide his Chaos Spawn. And then he had shoved his Gores up, and I managed to Miasmic Mirage them for the rest of the game. So they got stuck in front of my 50 archers on a hill. And I just managed to just wipe out the whole unit, and that unit had his general in it. So that got me like 800 points. At the end of the game, I managed to pick off one of the spawn once again with an ambushing Tomb Scorpion. And so I won that game. Like I want to say that was a 13-7 or a 14-6. It would have been bigger, but that Ungor unit, he'd ran his third shaman into it, so now it was like a 1,200 point unit, and there was just no way I was going to get anything out of it. So I just basically killed everything else on the board. But that was a really good game. He was an awesome opponent. He really knew his stuff. It was just his team captain told him to be aggressive, and then came back and was like, "You don't have to be aggressive anymore," because. Yeah, and that's what he said. He's like, way too late, dude, because by that point I'd miraged this unit in front of me, and he was like, I've just given him like so many points. And the reason why his team captain had said that was because this was the matchup where our Bretonia player in the mirror lost his general like turn 1 or turn 2 to a cannon, and ended up losing the game like 18-2. So they were like, we've got this now. Wow. All we have to do is get draws in the rest of our games. But I ended up winning mine. I think it was 14-6. And Val won his game, which was a vampire mirror. I think it was like 15-5. So it ended up becoming now the Tomb King player who was playing Rob had to win his game to win the matchup. And and they ended up coming to an 11-9, which ended up being a draw basically for both of us. So that was our and that was the team that we thought we would have to beat to win the event. And they thought the same thing about us. So it was really great. I wish it had been on day 2, but we knew it was probably going to be day 1 with it being only an 8-team event. Day 2, my first game was I had to take the L and play into Bretonia, which was the only matchup of their lists that I was worried about, because Bretonia is fast and they can just pressure me out. And he was running the Green Knight, which is always a problem, but he wasn't running Exiles. So he didn't have any cannons, which was a big deal for me. Mm-hmm. And his Pegasus Knight unit was only like 5 models instead of okay. So it was manageable. I corner deployed everything. And I did get to pick deployment zones. I won the roll for deployment, which was huge. So I managed to pick a deployment zone that only had 1 forest in it. And the forest was entirely in my deployment zone. And he had more drops than me, so the chances were pretty good that I was also going to get to go first, which were huge in both ways. Oh, sorry, no, he was going to pray to the lady, so we knew I was going to go first anyway. So what I ended up doing was I put my unit of skeleton skirmishers. I had a unit of 5 skeleton skirmishers that I was putting my my level 4 elementalism guy in. Mm-hmm. I just had them inside the forest and put my Ushabti in front of the forest. And with that, I was able to block that out from his Green Knight being able to come in my deployment zone. And then he was really worried about the Ushabti. So he deployed in the exact opposite corner from me of the board, which was perfect because now I had multiple turns to deal with him. And it went from me assuming I was going to lose like 12-8 or 13-7 to I'm probably going to draw this game because I can just stay away from him until the end of the game, and maybe I lose like a Necrosphinx, but I can probably pick up one of his smaller units of knights and make it like a draw, because he was running like a big brick of men-at-arms for like the combat res brick, and then he had a unit of like 5 or 6 Grail Knights. The Pegasus Knights, he had his general was on a Hippogriff with the killing blow, the monstrous killing blow and killing blow, you know what I'm trying to say, thing. And he also had, he was immune to poison. So unless my Ushabti shot him, I wasn't going to get a lot out of that. He had his level 4 Prophetess with his Pegasus Knights. And then he had his obligatory Knights of the Realm. But yeah, because he corner deployed, it gave me a lot of time to reposition and wait for the Green Knight to come out. And once the Green Knight came out on his board edge, I could play around him. And he made kind of two kind of big errors, one of which did lead us to spending half an hour trying to work out how to fix it, because I wanted him to have it back. He didn't really think something through, and I was trying to be sportsmanlike. He tried to do a double charge where he was going to charge a Tomb Scorpion that had failed to charge the turn prior, and also charge my Necrosphinx. So charge the Necrosphinx with his Pegasus Knights, and then charge the Tomb Scorpion with the Grail Knights. He did the Grail Knight charge first, but because he did that, he actually couldn't get his Pegasus Knights into combat with the Necrosphinx, and they would have auto failed. And it just was kind of a feels bad, because he was really all excited about it. And I told him after he did it, I was like, we should do this differently, because otherwise, your Pegasus Knights auto fail, and you're standing directly in front of my 6 Ushabti, and that's just going to be real bad for you.
Yeah.
But it took us a while, because resetting up the Grail Knights, we realized the Grail Knights also wouldn't fit, so they would have to do a disordered charge, which then made them blunt their lance, and then they could only fit one guy into combat with my Scorpion, and it was we had to get a judge involved to work it all out, and get it set up the proper way, because he thought he could put his Pegasus Knights sideways into the Necrosphinx to make them fit. Because they're skirmishers and don't have a facing. And I was just adamant. I was like, I'm giving you a big take back. I'm not going to let you go sideways into my Necrosphinx. And luckily the judge kind of came in and was like, well, you have to maximize the amount of guys you can get into combat if you're doing this one first. And if you put them in sideways, you're going to automatically have less guys. So regardless of anything else, you can't do it. So that helped me out. Anyway, because
skirmishing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just so happy to have it in the game on units that are problematic.
Yeah. So because I had Light of Protection up, his Pegasus Knights basically did 1 wound to my Necrosphinx. I still lost the combat because of how much combat res he had with his Men-at-Arms that had also charged me. I charged them the previous turn because he finally didn't get off Falconhorn. But it kind of locked him in a really weird situation where he didn't want to follow up into me when I gave ground. He did kill the Tomb Scorpion, but the Tomb Scorpion had, because of that, the Grail Knights had overran and basically plopped themselves directly in front of my Ushabti. So on my turn, my Necrosphinx charged the Men-at-Arms with the hopes of just continuing wearing them down, and he failed his terror test and ran off the board. Or I pursued him and captured him, which was huge. And then I killed all of the Grail Knights but one with the Ushabti shooting at them. He had thought he had cornered my big brick of skeletons because he had gotten the Green Knight directly in front of them, and he was coming at them with his Knights of the Realm. And what I ended up doing, and also his Lord was coming in from the side, and all I had was 1 Necrosphinx to try and protect him. But I managed to Miasmic Mirage the Green Knight because he forgot I had that. And then I just teleported to the literal opposite side of the board with TMP because TMP is broken. And it put me directly in front of one of his other units, which I just blew away and caused them to flee. And then he got really salty, which I kind of felt bad for because this was Tomb King bullshit going into full effect. It also let me shimmy my Necrosphinx out of the way of his Lord. And then to make matters worse, I was able to put down the Elementalism Vortex in front of the Lord, which blocks line of sight. And then on my turn, it didn't move. Or at his turn, sorry, it didn't move. So his Lord couldn't charge anything. So basically he had a turn where the only thing he could do was try to charge his Pegasus Knights into something. And he was and he couldn't because the only thing available to them was the Necrosphinx that I now managed to get off Earthen Ramparts on, as well as something else. So he would, and they had Light of Protection up. So he's like, I can't even deal with that anymore. And he ended up just running away. And that I ended up pulling off a 13-7 in that matchup. It was great. I really that was the one matchup where I felt like I played my ass off. I did leave points on the table because that one Grail Knight not dying meant that I didn't get the 300 points from them, which kind of sucked. But we had a really tight game. And then my final matchup was into, who did I play in my last game? Orcs and Goblins. I played into a pure Night Goblin list. He had a brick of 60 Night Goblin archers with poison. He had 2 units of 30 Night Goblins, everything with max fanatics, 2 Doom Divers, 2 Rock Lavas, and then a bunch of Squig Hoppas. And then just characters to back that all up. In that game, I felt really bad. This was Derek DeRay. She's a guy I've met a couple times. He's a really awesome dude, really funny guy. Turn 1, he had also a unit of Snotling. Turn 1, the way he deployed, he put his Snotlings in front of one of his Rock Lavas. I asked him if he knew that they were largely insignificant, so I could shoot over them. Yeah. He said, yeah. And then I proceeded to move my Ushabti up and destroy one of the Rock Lavas with my first volley of shooting. On his turn, he went balls deep. He put all of his artillery into my casket, and I managed to get the only one that hit. I managed to regen save. The other ones went off, and then he TMP'd his big unit in front of me with all the shooting, and he was like, "I think I outshoot you." And I said, "No, you do not." and
brutal.
And it went really poorly for him after that. He was a great guy. I'd managed to position myself so that when he released his fanatics, they were only ever going to hit one unit. I kept myself 2 inches apart between my units. I will say I did that unintentionally and was very grateful when the fanatics got released. And then I remembered why I did it. On my turn 2, my Tomb Scorpions both came in from ambush, which I initially didn't want, but he had left a space in his back line. So when they came on, what it ended up forcing was his Snotlings ended up failing their impetuous test and having to charge them because they were skirmishers, which gave me all those Snotling points for free instead of having to slowly eke them out from shooting. And then 2 of his War Machines exploded from misfires. One of my Necrosphinxes killed a unit of Squig Hoppers in a corner that he was using to try and protect his other War Machine, but that caused that other War Machine to panic and run off the board because they're only leadership 4. And then I basically just played cleanup for the rest of the game while he TMP'd away from me with his big brick of goblins that I could never kill. But I basically picked up the rest, and that was my final match. But yeah, it was really great. Tomb Kings are busted. It felt like I was cheating the whole time. Basically, every round I would start by just saying, every round, and I'm sure all my opponents, every round I said the same thing. What do I need to cast? Because what I learned in my practice games and watching a lot of games for mortuary cults is really you only lose if you miscast at the wrong time. So I was very deliberate in my opening rounds of not casting spells I didn't actually need, because I think that's a big problem with a lot of people that spam wizards is they're trying to get all their buffs and debuffs off. Yeah. And not doing the math on what that's actually going to accomplish. Because if you're never going to get shot, why cast Glittering Robes? Right? Stuff like that. So that was my big thing was every turn I would take a second. I would say, I need to calm down if I was getting too excited. And then, which happened, there was which was
all the time.
Oh, especially that third round matchup against the really awesome Beastman player, when he finally kind of put himself in a position where I was going to be able to start getting points. I made a couple mistakes, and then I stopped myself, and I was like, I need to calm down. And he laughed, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to cast my spells now. But that was basically it. It was take a breath. What spells do I need to cast this turn? Make sure I cast those first in case I miscast. my miscasts, I had one game where I miscast like 5 times, but all of them hilariously were vortexes. So I got to keep casting, and much to my opponent's chagrin, it didn't matter because I would lose like 14 skeletons and then res them back the next turn, right?
Right.
So it was a good day.
Dumb. Happy it worked for you, dude. Happy you guys did so well also. Is there anything else we need to cover on this episode, or should we wrap it up?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I would say, like, to talk up what we should have done differently. I think Val's list was perfect for what we needed it to do because we really wanted somebody that could hold up other undead armies. And the Vampire Count Screams list was actually quite good at doing that. He played a lot of mirrors and played them very well for us. Rob's list was a really good Dick Puncher list, which you always want to have. The problem was the double Gigantic Chaos Bond. They're not reliable enough to do what you need them to do every turn. And for that reason, I think if we had been smarter, we would have run a Warp Fire Dragon instead of them. Because you have a lot more control. And in Rob's first game that he lost 11-9, it was against double Wyverns. And his main complaint was that the 2 Wyverns were able to basically maneuver him for the majority of the game. And if he'd had that second dragon, that wouldn't have been the case. He could have positioned himself better. So I think that was a mistake on our part to not do double dragon. Shane's list was what we needed to play against the Dick Puncher lists. Like, we needed him to play the Bretonia mirrors, to play into like Warriors of Chaos and High Elves and anybody else that was trying to run at you, because he would win those run at you matchups. Yeah. He also took one of our, like, there were a couple skew lists we had to play into, and one of them that we were not quite sure about was a list that was running 6 cannons and 3 organ guns for dwarves, and then a bunch of gyrocopters. And that was a list where, like, everybody looked at it and were like I was like, I can probably get a 12-8 against this, but there's always the chance that I don't.
Correct. Yeah.
Like the organ guns go off or something like that before I can.
I love those lists in teams where you're like, oh, I could absolutely steamroll this, or I couldn't, and I lose like 700 points turn 1, which is also an option. So true.
And Shane was really worried about it at first, and then he was like, actually, I think as long as I can hide from his cannons turn 1, I just win this match. And so we put him, and that's exactly what happened. He managed to avoid the cannons. The guy had a couple untimely misfires, and I think he like 17-3'd him or 18-2'd him or something like that.
Oh, yeah. That comes down to table pick though as well. If that army's going up and getting its, like, you know, everything's rolling downhill, beautiful open table with no for your opponent to hide, that's just so savage. Yeah. Anyway,
that's basically it.
We are going to wrap up on that note. We may or may not have time to go and do a part 2 for this one. If we do get time for a part 2, I think it's going to be a great idea for us to try and design our own 8-pack. What do we think would be the best 8-pack team lineup that we could come up with? And hopefully you guys will be there to join us. If not, we'll do it on another episode. But boys, thank you so much, and well done to you and the crew at the Canhammer Team Tournament. Congratulations on the 2nd place. Unfortunately, not able to keep your doubles winning acumen, as strong as your team's winning acumen.
Yeah, it's okay. It's
still pretty good.
Yeah, still undefeated. That's what I'll tell people. Still undefeated.
That's it. Champion of the world, Peter the Falcon. And we are out of here. Say good night, boys.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to That Old World Charm with those charming chaps, Adam, Danny, and Peter the Falcon. Thanks ever so much. Cheerio.